we're going to look at the membrane around the brain, around the spine, and out through all of the nerves. And this is one complete, undivided membrane. It's one continuous sheet, and it's like maybe the bark around a tree. And that's not a good description because the bark is dead, but or maybe the first cells inside the bark just travels, like you've got the brain would be more the bottom and the trunk would be the spine, and then when it becomes the branches and twigs and everything, that's it going out through the nerves, and that layer of cells encases the whole tree. And in the same way I'll be showing today, we'll be working with this sheath, or what I've called what have I called it? The Onebrane. Instead of, it's a membrane and it's got 5 or 6 different names for the different areas. There's one for the brain, there's one for the ways it's divided in the brain, there's one for the spine, there's 2 for how it goes out through the nerves, and people see it in sections. So rather than that, we've just called that the Onebrane, and it encases, and then people can have a picture of it encasing that whole area. And I'm going to show the fluid dynamics for that today, and we're going to do meditations with that. And another new name, while I was meditating this morning, there's also a layer of connective tissue around the brain and around the nerves, which is like a sponge, and also the astrocyte cells within the central nervous system are a similar thing, and I've called that the one sponge. Rather than lots of different names, it travels through the whole system, and in the same way as you can pour water into the top of a sponge, it will drain through and come out the other end. The same happens with the cranial sea. It travels through this sponge on all levels and out through the sponge in the nerves. So will be 2 new names to work with, 2 new concepts that are all part of this whole vision. We will learn holographic breathing, and then we will continue on to include the cranial sea and how it flows out through the nerves, and we will include the Onebrane that encases that whole system and allow the cranial sea to also flow out through that. And I would just, for the new people, just to give some perspective, quite often people have a view of the brain that it's solid and maybe has some fluid around it. It's not true. The brain is 90% water. It's an aqueous environment. Those are the brain cells. This is a ventricle here. There's loads of space. The cells are held together by tentacles, and they're more like sea floating, the cells are more like seaweed floating in the sea. So the cranial sea can just flow through that. There's a lot of space. And as it travels down through the nerves, I'm not going to explain it again, but I may show some pictures of it. It easily travels out through the cranial capillaries that travels down through the nerves. So there's just to have an image that there's plenty of space in the brain, in the spine. It's full of cranial sea, and this flows off through the nerves. So that will be the end of the meditation. We'll go into that in much more detail in the second part, and I will show much more anatomy there. I feel myself rushing. I think we've got a lot of material tonight. I feel myself rushing to try and get it all in. So to start off with, I'm going to teach holographic breathing. Wave your hands if you can hear me okay. Am I loud enough? Everyone thinks I'm loud enough. Great. All right. Holographic breathing. The breath is through the nose. The lips are closed, relaxed and sealed. The tongue is relaxed on the roof of the mouth. You don't have to do the, well, you can do that bit. You can breathe through your nose to start off with. Make sure you're breathing through your nose. Make sure your lips are closed. Need your lips closed and be breathing through your nose. The tongue is on the roof of the mouth. The upper surface of the tongue is on the roof of the mouth. The tip of the tongue will be close to or touching the front teeth. And then going back from there, you may have ½ an inch of your tongue on the roof mouth. You may have an inch of your tongue on the roof mouth, or you may have the whole tongue covering the whole roof of mouth. But not to force anything, not to try and put lots of your tongue on the roof mouth, just as much as feels comfortable. Over a period of time, the tongue gets larger, it gets softer, it becomes more flexible, it loses toxins, and then just naturally, without any effort, spreads across the whole roof of the mouth. So before that, you just need to allow it to have time. There's no force in holographic breathing. So important that it is the upper surface and that it is relaxed. All right, so that is the basis of it. Now, for new people, I want you to wait before doing the next part till we go through the instructions, because it needs a little, it's a little bit counterintuitive and it takes a little while to drop in. Along with the lips being closed and the tongue on the roof of the mouth, there's a gentle motion of the jaw. On the in-breath, the jaw is opening, and on the out-breath, the jaw is closing. And it's a small motion. It's about 1/4 inch, 3 or 4 millimeters, tiny motion. And while the jaw is opening and closing, the lips stay closed all of the time, and the tongue stays on the roof of the mouth. Now, one of the main things that happens when I'm teaching is that people think, yeah, that's fine, and then we come to doing it and they're like, that's impossible. How is it possible to move the jaw and have the lips closed and the tongue on the roof of the mouth? So I want definitely the new people to try that without the breath. Have your lips closed, have your tongue on the roof of the mouth, and just start bouncing your jaw up and down or move the jaw around, and notice that you can easily move the jaw and have the lips closed. It's not a problem. So just try that. All right, now I'm going to demonstrate it. So I can take these off. One, you can see how subtle it is. You probably won't see my jaw moving, but you can see that the lips stay closed, and you may discern a change in energy as I'm doing it. So I'm just going to do 3 or 4 breaths with holographic breathing. So you can see, 1, it's a very subtle motion. 2, the lips stay relaxed and sealed. Okay. And it's kind of instant. Once you know holographic breathing, you can just start for 1 or 2 seconds and you just go into this completely other space. For me, I can feel the energy releasing through my spine, through my brain. I can feel the kundalini going off. It's kind of just an instant hit in a way. But if you're new, you may have noticed I didn't open my lips, and you probably couldn't have seen it, so it means the movement is very subtle. And what happens is, in the exercises to learn it, we start off by doing the motion. But at a certain point in the exercises, it integrates with the muscles of the breath of the body, and as they're moving, they automatically move the jaw in that way. And at that point, it just feels like you're not doing it anymore. You're just allowing your jaw to move with the breath, the lips being closed and the tongue on the roof mouth. For some reason, it's instinctual, and it's as if you've always known this breathing from somewhere before. So we want to get to that point when this breathing just takes over and the energies just flow. So we'll go through that and into that. And through that time, for the new people, it's important to be sitting up, not lying down, because there's a good chance you'll fall asleep. And if you do, you miss some instructions, and it's a miss as good as a mile. If you're not doing it correctly, it's not working. So the first time, after you've learnt it, once it's going, you can do it lying down, you can do it upside down, you can do it walking, you can do it while you're doing the washing up. But the first time you learn it, you want to be sitting up and aware to make sure you get all the different instructions and the different changes that we'll be going through. Okay. Are there any questions before we start? Okay. None. Okay, then we are going to start. So, make yourself comfortable. And for the people who know holographic breathing, just dropping into the holographic breathing. For the people who don't know holographic breathing, just breathing in a relaxed and easy way. And we're going to bring in some resources. So sending a smile, sending some energy to the earth, and allow the earth to say hello back. Notice what it feels like to receive the energies from the earth, and also allow your energies to communicate with the earth. You need your eyes closed, you need to be relaxed. And notice what that feels like through your body and through your energies. And then send a smile, send some energy to the higher self, and also to the beneficial energies. The beneficial energies are any energy channels you work with, or higher beings, just beneficial energies, and the higher self. And allow the higher self and the beneficial energies to say hello back. And notice what that feels like through your body and through your energies. And asking the earth, the higher self, and the beneficial energies to be with you through the whole webinar as your source, your healing, and your guide. And starting off, the lips are relaxed and closed. The tongue is relaxed and on the roof of the mouth. The breath is through the nose. And start making some small up-down motions of the jaw. Not with the breath yet, just bouncing the jaw up and down, just small motion, relaxed and slow. Just noticing you can bounce the jaw up and down or move it up and down, and you can keep your lips closed. And once you're used to that, as the jaw is relaxing open, allow the breath to come in through the nose. As the jaw is relaxing closed, allow the breath to leave through the nose. So as the jaw opens, letting the breath come in. As the jaw closes, letting the breath leave. Notice how it feels like a bellows. The jaw relaxing open kind of draws the breath in. The jaw relaxing closed exhales the breath through your nose. And it will start working through the back of your neck. It will start affecting the back of your neck, so just let your neck be relaxed. Let the back of your head be relaxed. And just let the energies move through your neck and your head. The jaw gently opens and it draws the breath in. The jaw gently closes and it exhales the breath. And when we're working with the jaw in this way, it's quite physical, it has quite a physical feel to it. The jaw is opening and the breath is being drawn in. The jaw is closing and the breath is leaving. Notice how you can keep your lips closed. You don't have to open your lips. And that you can keep your tongue on the roof of the mouth. Now if your lips do open, just let them relax closed. If the tongue does come off the roof of the mouth, just let it go back. And if it's awkward in any way, just make the movement smaller, slower and softer. Gently moving the jaw on the in-breath. As the jaw opens, the breath comes in through the nose. As the jaw closes, the breath leaves through the nose. Notice it starting to open up through your spine. So this is an important part now, so to just be aware of this change. Moving your awareness from the jaw to the breath coming in and out through the nose. So as you breathe in through the nose, the jaw just automatically relaxes open. Breathing out through the nose, the jaw relaxes closed. So instead of the jaw moving the breath, now the breath is moving the jaw. As you breathe in through the nose, the jaw relaxes open. As you breathe out through the nose, the jaw relaxes closed. As you breathe in, the jaw is opening and the teeth are separating. As the jaw is closing, as you're breathing out, the jaw is closing and the teeth float together. There's no pressure, or it's fine to have them so they almost touch but not quite. They don't have to touch. But the jaw is free and relaxed all of the time. Breathing in, the jaw relaxes open. Breathing out, the jaw relaxes closed. The lips stay closed all of the time. The tongue stays on the roof of the mouth all of the time. Then we're going to bring the awareness into the body. As the chest is opening, the jaw relaxes open with it. As the chest is closing, the jaw relaxes closed with it. Breathing in, the chest opens and the jaw follows. Breathing out, the chest closes, the jaw follows. Then coming down into the abdomen, breathing in, the jaw relaxes open. Breathing out with the abdomen, the jaw relaxes closed. Notice how the jaw is integrating with all the muscles of the breath, and as you breathe, the jaw just opens with it and closes. Notice how natural it feels, as if you've always known how to breathe like this. Notice how energies start releasing through your spine, through your brain, through your head, and through your whole body. Breathing in, the pelvis is opening and the jaw is opening. Breathing out, the pelvis is closing and the jaw is closing. They're moving together. And the arms and legs. On the in-breath, all the cells in the arms and legs are opening. On the out-breath, they're closing. Notice how your whole body starts to breathe. Every cell starts to breathe. Once the jaw is moving in this way, with the dynamic of the lips closed and the tongue on the roof of the mouth, it sets into motion a whole new modality that will heal you through and through. Will heal your brain, will heal every cell through your whole body. It's a new modality for the breath. Breathing in, the jaw relaxes open. Breathing out, it closes. Now we're going to start feeling, we've felt the up-down motion of the jaw, we're going to start feeling the sideways motion to become aware of the cranial sea in the brain. So also on the in-breath there's a widening. The face widens, the cranium widens. Now, if you're new, this may take a little time to start. Breathing in, jaw is opening to the sides, the cranium is opening to the sides. Breathing out, the jaw is closing medially, the cranium closing medially. And it's through the whole skull, through your face, through your cranium, the whole skull opening to the sides as you breathe in, closing medially as you breathe out. You can feel it through your whole body. You can feel it through your neck and throat, as if you've got gills, opening on the in-breath, closing on the out-breath. Through your torso and abdomen, opening on the in-breath to the sides, closing on the out-breath. Through the arms and legs. If you can't feel it, just imagine it. That's okay. The arms and legs as if they're widening, opening on the in-breath, closing on the out-breath. And if you come to the sides of the cranium, you've got two bones there, the temporal bones around the ears. On the in-breath, these open. On the out-breath, they close. And underneath these two bones are the cranial sea. You've got a layer of cranial sea around the brain, and then you've got the cranial sea through the whole brain, and you've got ventricles of cranial sea, and all of the brain cells are floating in a sea of cranial sea. And as the cranium's opening to the sides, you can feel it ventilating this cranial sea. You feel all the cells being ventilated by this cranial sea. Breathing in, it's all opening. Breathing out, it's closing. The cranial sea is it's salt water. It's 99% water, salt, oxygen, glucose. Breathing in, it opens to the sides. Breathing out, you can feel the cranial sea underneath it. And it has quite a bright light quality. Notice it's different to the bones. When you become aware of the cranial sea, it channels, has quite a light quality, and being charged by the Ajna chakra, by the crown chakra, and heavenly channels are dropping down through the cranial sea in the cranium. Feel it opening up through the crown chakra, a channel of white light coming down into this vortex of cranial water. It travels down inside the spine. You can feel the cranial sea through the brain. You can feel the cranial sea through the spinal cord, around the spinal cord. And breathing with this whole central part of your nervous system that is made out of water. It's 99, water is 90% water, and the water in it is 99% water. It's a sea. And water is the perfect channel. So notice what that feels like through your brain, through your spine. Notice how healing it is. Being aware of that going through your neck, through the vertebrae and the spinal cord in your neck. There's something releasing in people's necks. Let the cranial sea travel through your neck. You can feel it in the brain, around the brain, in the spinal cord, around the spinal cord, right down into your sacrum. Now letting that cranial sea flow off down through the nerves. And notice what it feels like as it travels out through your nerves. Notice how it relaxes the whole central nervous system. It's like, feels like it's taking a pressure off as that cranial sea flows out through the nerves, out through the whole body. Feel it traveling through all your organs, out through your arms and legs, through your hands and feet. And it's a continuous channel of sea. It has a lovely white healing quality to it, and you've got the channel from the higher self dropping down into the cranial sea in the brain, traveling through the spine and traveling out through every nerve. Allow yourself to channel. There feels like quite a channeling type energy tonight. Allow yourself to be informed by the higher self or the beneficial energies. Let that flow down into the sea. Now you may not hear anything in words or understand anything, but you can allow that to inform your DNA, your cells. It's kind of a transmission tonight. Gently breathing with the holographic breathing and allowing that transmission to happen. It travels through the cranial sea, it travels through the neurons, the astrocyte cells, all the cells of the brain, travels out through the myelinating glial cells and the cranial capillaries down through the nerves and out through your whole body. Gives you the ability to channel. Holographic breathing does everything. It's kundalini, it raises your energy, it's tantric, it brings the male and female together, connects through the top of your head so you can start channeling. Allow yourself to channel. Gently breathing with the holographic breathing. allowing yourself to channel. Notice what that feels like. Now around the brain, or around the cranial sea in the brain, around the cranial sea in the spine, around the cranial sea in the nerves, you've got the Onebrane, one membrane, one continuous membrane, holding that cranial sea. So you can feel the cranial sea, you can feel the membrane around that it's contained in. Notice the quality. Notice the Onebrane is much darker. Notice it may feel a little bit confined by having this membrane around you. And then start letting the cranial sea flow out through that membrane. So it starts flowing out through the Onebrane, around the brain. Notice what that feels like. So it starts flowing out through the Onebrane, around the spinal cord. And it starts flowing out through the Onebrane, around every nerve, through the whole body, and every nerve fiber, where it just gets down to one nerve fiber through the whole body. And staying in the nervous system, staying in the cranial sea, but notice the quality as it travels out through the Onebrane. You are now experiencing your nervous system eliminating. It's the cranial lymph, it's the cranial sea that has been used and wants to go home, is flowing out through the Onebrane. And as it does, it moisturizes the Onebrane, and it starts using it as a transformer. Allowing, notice how it becomes more grounding and starts to become highly relaxing. And that you can feel the Onebrane and the communication as it travels through the Onebrane out into your body. So inside the Onebrane you may feel, if you're just aware inside, you've got the cranial sea and the cranial cells and this lighter energy. If you include the Onebrane, it becomes darker. And then when you let the cranial sea flow through it, the one cell starts, the Onebrane starts to work, starts to become the communication between the cranial sea in the nervous system and the sea of the body, which is the interstitial fluid, the fluid between every cell. It is the communication between the cranial sea and the body's sea. Gently breathing with the holographic breathing, feeling that communication from around the brain, around the spine, and around every nerve. And the cranial sea is going home towards the heart. We're going to come back in about a minute. So just being with that quality, how grounding it is, and how the energy changes as it comes out through the Onebrane. Different energy. Gently breathing with the holographic breathing. relaxing and being with that. Okay, and when you feel ready, gently allowing yourself to come back. So, not everybody gets on with my talks. People like the meditations. Not everybody wants to know about the talks, but in a way, for me, it comes as a package. You know, I work with it, I feel it inside, and I want to give the whole picture. And something in the talking about it, something in the describing of it, sets the mind at rest and sets it up for the meditation. I don't think I could just run the meditations without first describing what we're doing. So I will continue with that. If you find the anatomy hard, just let my voice go through you. You don't have to remember any of it. You don't have to remember any names. You can use it as a meditation. There's a channel that comes through when I'm doing the meditation, and there's a channel that comes through when I'm talking. They probably are the same thing, but they feel slightly different. And when I listen to my talks, I can kind of see and feel the channel in that. And I can feel the channel when I'm running meditation. So if you spend too much time analysing what I say, then it can take you out of that. But there is specific scientific data which is really helpful. But at the same time, just let it breeze through you. You know, there is the recordings, and you can go over that information again. So my invitation is to view it in another way than just a description. There is an energy behind it. Oh, for me there is. Other people may not experience that, but something goes on in the explaining of it. So let's show you some pictures. You know, I was travelling, I'd lost my home, I'd lost all my money, I was still very ill with Lyme's disease, and my Kundalini went off and I lost my mind, and I was just living in a van, and I started painting these pictures of how I saw the Cranial Sea, because I realised that how I experienced it was correct, and how it was shown in the anatomy books was make-believe, well, at least for me, and I still believe that, and no one's told me any different so far, so I still believe that. And you know, every time we come to a different webinar, I find other pictures in it that, wow, that's really useful for that bit, and that is also so today, and we'll come to those pictures in a bit. Now, you don't have to realise what the bits in it, but you have the central brain complex in the middle, then the cerebellum is, the face is here, this is the cerebellum, and then you've got the whole cerebrum here. So this is normally called the dura. The membrane around here is called the dura. Then the membrane around the spinal cord is called the dural tube. We're just calling it the Onebrane. Rather than a membrane, we're going to call it the Onebrane, around the brain, around the spinal cord, and out and around every nerve. Because the membrane that goes out around the nerves is disconnected from the dura. It's got a different name and thought of as a different thing, but it's not. It just continues. It just gets thinner. So it starts off strong, very thick, around the brain, around the spinal cord, very thick. And then as it goes out through the nerves, as they keep splitting, it just gets finer and finer and finer and finer. So it's around the brain. There's another one. Let's have a look. Here we have the spinal cord, and this is the central brain area without the cerebrum above it. Surround the whole spinal cord. The spinal cord stops about here and it drops right down into the sacrum. That's all full of cranial fluid, and around it is the Onebrane. And that carries off. Here we have the spinal cord in here, or this is the spinal cord here, and you've got the central canal there, and here it is going off down through the nerves, and you can see the dura, what would be, it's the Onebrane. It's one membrane, it carries on, and it just gets thinner and thinner and thinner as it goes out. Now, further up, the thicker it is. So if fluid is going to escape, it's more likely going to escape here, where the Onebrane is very thin, than up here, where it's very thick. So there's this natural motion of it flowing down the nerves, and when it gets into the nerves, the outside membrane is getting thinner and thinner, and say the nerve is 1/10 of the width of the dural tube, or the Onebrane around the spine. Well, the Onebrane is also 1/10 of the thickness, and then when that nerve splits and becomes two nerves, the width is half again, and then when so it keeps getting finer and finer and easier for the fluid to flow out through it. Now, I'm going to, rather than go down those pictures, I'm going to explain something about the Cranial Sea. A lot of people have seen this bottle before. I've modified it now. In your body, you have the blood leaving the heart in red, the arterial blood. You have the blood coming back to the heart, the venous blood. The blood comes out of the capillaries and becomes the sea for the body. It's called the interstitial fluid. To make things easier for me, it's just called the sea of the body. That's around every single cell, and it fills the cells. I don't know exactly what's in it, but there'll be proteins, lipids, oxygen, glucose, everything the cells need. Then, going back to the heart, that absorbs back into the venous blood, goes back to the heart. The venous, this is going quite quickly, the arterial blood. The venous blood is going very slowly, so it can't take all of that fluid back. And you have this amount of fluid in the middle. This all goes back through the lymph. The lymph ducts, they're 4 times as many or as wide, if that is the kind of how many arteries there are, and that is how many veins there are, and that is how many lymph ducts there are. It's 4 times the size of the venous blood, and it's 4 times the size of the arterial blood. Again, if I'm losing you, just drift along, let the words go through you. Enjoy the talks as if they're a meditation. Well, they are meditation and part of the channel. The same thing happens in the brain. The same thing happens in the spinal cord, and the same thing happens in the nerves. The arterial blood arrives, and in the capillaries it comes out, becomes Cranial Sea rather than the body sea. Well, the nerves are slightly different, we'll come to that in a minute, but the whole central nervous system, it becomes Cranial Sea. So this bit in the middle is Cranial Sea. The venous blood going back to the heart is going very slowly, and in fact it's going so slowly that in the venous, I forgot what they're called, venous something or others, but anyway, where it's leaving the brain can be going so slowly that it actually goes backwards sometimes. Got these reservoirs of venous blood leaving, and sometimes it's so slow it actually goes backwards, so it's very slow. So it leaves this amount of cranial fluid. You've got this amount of cranial fluid left in the central nervous system. Okay, venous. I wasn't thinking of venous return, but it's yes, the venous return, but there's another name for them. But anyway, you've got this amount of cranial sea that is not going to go back to the heart through the venous blood or the venous return. And there's no lymph. There's no lymph ducts. So what do the anatomy books do to explain this? How do they explain how this huge area of cranial sea gets back to the heart? How do you think they explain that? They don't. They don't explain that. It's not said. It's totally ignored, which is the same as saying in body, that would be saying the same as we don't know that the lymph exists. It's that size that is not mentioned anywhere. Now I see these things like articles saying, oh, we've found the cranial lymph, and they show these tiny, tiny little lymph ducts that are found in the actual Onebrane, as if that is going to, those tiny things are going to carry this mass of fluid. If you're going to find the cranial lymph for the brain and the spine, it's got to be 4 times the size of the venous blood or the arterial blood. It's got to be huge tubes, and they just aren't there. So now the nerves are going to be different slightly because the fluid is different, but I'm going to include them in this. So I'm going to include this bottle, the whole outside of that bottle is the Onebrane, and it's around the brain, it's around the spinal cord, and it's around every nerve. And arterial blood comes to the brain, it comes to the spine, it comes to the comes to the nerves, creates fluid, and there's no lymph. There's no lymph in the brain, there's no lymph in the spine, and there's no lymph in the nerves. And there's no other tubes coming out. There's one place that cranial sea can release. It's only one place. Put your hands up. We did it in the meditation. How does that cranial sea get back into the body? No one? It comes out through the membrane. It just en masse comes out through the Onebrane around the brain. Now, around the brain it's very thick, so not a lot is going to come out, but some is going to come out. It's going to come out through the Onebrane around the spine. Again, it's quite thick, but some will come out. Then it's going to travel, a lot of that can't come out will travel down through the nerves, and then that will come out through the nerves where it's very fine. So one way or another, the Onebrane surrounds the whole nervous system. So one way or another, the cranial sea that is not going back through the venous return, whoever said that, thank you, is going to come out through the Onebrane. And then from there it goes into the sea for the body, and in the meditation we're going to have it being picked up by the lymph and then coming back to the heart. So I'm not sure. Put your hands up if that made sense to you. Yeah, a few, yeah, okay, there we go. I'm making sense at last. Unless you can find, now I'm feeling happy, people are understanding me. Unless you can find great big tubes 4 times the size of either the venous return or the venous capillaries or the arterial capillaries, unless you can find tubes 4 times the size of that, you've got this membrane surrounding the whole thing. The only place it can get back into the body, there's only one place it can come, is out through that. Now there's a beauty to that, and it's absolutely essential that it does flow out through the Onebrane. Raise your hands if you think you know the answer of why it has to. Not that it has to physically, but there's a fundamental reason that is helping if it does that. Anyone? Okay, I'm not going to, one person put their hand up, I'm not going to get people to say why, but I just wanted to check. The reason is, in the last webinar, I described the 3 filters that create the Cranial Sea. The Cranial Sea is 99% water. It's a very pristine environment. It allows channeling, it stops bacteria coming into the nervous system, it stops viruses coming in, and it only allows oxygen, glucose, salt, and a few other things, but it makes a very pristine environment. Now, the sea for the body, if the sea for the body was to come into the environment of the Cranial Sea, the sea for the body is much thicker, maybe 70 or 80% water, it's full of fats, it's full of proteins. We would die. We would die. So by not having any lymph and having this continual flow out through this whole membrane around the nervous system, it stops any ingress of fluid from the sea of the body, which would normally call the interstitial. If it wasn't flowing out through the Onebrane, then it would mean fluids from inside the body can flow into the Cranial Sea for one way or another. They would work their way in and you would die. At the very least, you wouldn't be able to think or channel anymore. There's a reason that the Cranial Sea is so refined. So by having no lymph or lymph ducts and just allowing the Onebrane as a fluid filter, because it's just flowing one way, there's this huge body of fluid that's making its way out, stops anything else come in, so it makes a perfect filter. It has to flow out, because if it doesn't, the fluid from the body will flow in and it'll all be over. Okay. I love getting on my soapbox, I can tell you. One day, they're all going to agree with me, and you'll start finding this in anatomy books, and people say, how did we get it so wrong for so long? And there's that Martin, no one listens to him, but he was right the whole time. Right. And I mean, that time I was out of my box when I was painting all of these pictures. My Kundalini was, well, it was just starting to go off. When I finished the last painting I did, I made a video of it, and it just, the Kundalini rose, never stopped. I was gone. I was totally insane. I'm still insane. I just got used to it. So but the nice thing about being insane, it's really great when the Kundalini goes off. You just keep straightening the spine and straightening the spine and opening everything up. So there's the Onebrane, And the other new thing we're going to talk about is the one sponge. I will probably give that a different name, but I was just trying to work out how to call things this morning. I realised I've got to give it a new name. So we got the one sponge. So I've only got a couple of pictures for that. So here's this one I showed earlier of the Cranial Sea. Now you may not be able to see the Onebrane, but here is the Onebrane coming up here and then down there, and then from the top, I can't see it at the top, it comes down here and along there. Oh no, sorry, that's not correct. That's the pia mater, that's different. The Onebrane is that and that. Sorry, I'm confusing you all. But there's another thin membrane running here that's the outside of the nerves and the outside of the spinal cord. So we've got that one without any connective tissue. So let's find the other one. Okay, so here we have the one sponge. So it's the same picture, but in the spinal cord it's showing the astrocyte cells. These are the connective tissue for the brain and the spinal cord. They hold everything together, and they're also the highest intelligence. So they become the sponge for inside the brain and inside the spinal cord, and then around it you've got, which is normally called the, I've forgotten what it's called, it's a name for the arachnoid something, but it's another sponge that's around the brain, around the spinal cord, and is full of cranial sea and cushions the brain. So you've got what is essentially connective tissue in the spinal cord, you've got essentially connective tissue around the spinal cord, and then through the nerves you've got another connective tissue that's very fine fibres, very, very fine fibres. And this, you can almost see this tissue here, it's big. These are just cells, they're tiny, tiny, and these are finer, much finer than that. But it's about the same. You get about the same volume of fluid in all of this, in the spine, around the spine, and down the nerves. So it's like the cranial sea is flowing through a sponge. Now, it's hard for the cranial sea to flow out here, but it's much easier the thinner it gets. So you get this mass of cranial sea flowing off down the nerves. And even though they say the fluid can't flow down the nerves, it's rubbish. There's nothing. There's nothing to stop it. There's nothing at all. It just flows out down through the nerves, through this tissue. Who can think of a reason why it has to flow down through the nerves, other than it has to because you've got all this extra fluid? Who can think of a reason? No one. Okay, in the central nervous system, the cranial sea is created in 3 filters, and it makes the one thing that is the same about all of those filters is they have tight connections that only pure water can flow out, creates the cranial sea. In the nerves, the capillaries don't have tight junctions. So in the nerves, the fluid that is being created there is the same as in the body. In the nerves, you've got the sea of the body. It's interstitial fluid, which is full of all sorts of stuff. Parasites, viruses, lipids, proteins, all the different stuff that can't flow into the central nervous system, because if it does, you're dead. So again, it's a filter by a continual stream of cranial sea flowing down through the nerves. It's stopping the sea of the body, which the nerves are full of, flowing back up through that nerve into the central complex, into the pristine quality of the cranial sea. So if the cranial sea didn't flow down the nerves, if it just came to the nerves and for some reason stopped, if it didn't flow down the nerves, the interstitial fluid or the fluid of the body would flow up the nerves into the spinal cord, around the spinal cord, and your life would soon be over. So this whole thing that, oh, we don't know how the cranial sea could flow down the nerves. There's no alternative. None. You would be dead. And it has to flow somewhere. So it's like, I can feel myself, I'm sorry if I'm getting amplified here. It has to flow down through the nerves. And the filters, let's get the pictures, carry on with the pictures. So here we have inside of a nerve, and you've got the, now I'm not going to describe these, you'll have to go back, a whole webinar I did showing 3D pictures or 3D models of the myelinating glials and how it all worked. I can't teach it every time, but you can go back and watch that video. So this is getting towards the end. There's only 7 nerve fibers left in that. You've got an axon in the middle, which is a fiber, and you've got these myelinating glial cells, which are full of cranial fluid, cranial sea. They've got a tight connection, which only lets pure water into them, and they keep an environment of cranial sea in them. Then around all of these, you've got the one sponge, which has the blood flow to it, the capillaries to it, only doesn't have tight filters, so it's the same as the body. But because each one of these cells has tight connections, they only will let pure water into them, and then they will pull in oxygen and glucose and salt. So they create the cranial sea, the same as in the brain and the central nervous system, to flow through these capillaries down through the nerves. So you have both. You have cranial sea in the myelinating capillaries, and you have the sea of the body around them. That is right at the end. There's only 7, but notice how it's holographic, where this is coming out of the spinal cord. There's the same thing. There's these circles which are just full of the cranial capillaries, and each nerve would have like between 50 and 100,000 of these cranial capillaries going through them. And so rather than one cranial sea capillary, each one of these circles would have, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 capillaries in it. And then as it divides and divides, you end up with this towards the end. And you've got cranial sponge. You've got outside, you've got the Onebrane. Inside around these, you've got the one sponge with the sea of the body in it, and each one of these you've got cranial sea. If I'm driving you mad or you're having trouble remembering this, just let my words go through you. Use it just as a meditation. You don't have to remember this, you don't have to get it. I'm weird in that way. I need to know exactly what's happening. It's great. I drew these pictures. I haven't used these particular ones before because I haven't taught this particular one. Here you go. This was from Red Nose Day. So this is as it comes out of the spine. Each one of these little circles or hexagons, no, they're circles, is a cranial capillary. And between all of those cranial capillaries is the the one sponge with the fluids, the body fluids in it, or the sea of the body. Each one of these circles has cranial sea flowing in it, and this hexagons of sponge around it, they have the fluid of the body. You've got, after I painted this, I wish I'd done one of them blue and had a arterial and venous. So you've got the arterial blood coming, the venous blood coming back, and no lymph. So there's nowhere for that extra fluid to go but out sideways and then out through the wall at the side of the nerve back into the body. Wave your hand if I'm making sense in any way at all. Few people. Wave your hand if it's entertaining, even if you don't understand it. Most people. That's good. That's all I care about. That's inside the capillaries, layers of cranial sea. There's a tight junction, and it's all refined fluid inside. And they're 100 times as long as they're wide. They're really, really long. But this is a short one so that I could show the tight junctions. Where it's joining to the axon, you've got tight junctions all the way around. Where the lap of it, tight junctions all the way around. So only pure water can get in, and it's an intelligent cell. It draws in oxygen, glucose. So it maintains, the cranial sea can flow down through the nerves, and they're 100 times as long as they're wide, so they're really long, and where they join, it's thousands of little tentacles, so the cranial sea can flow through one, through the tentacles into the next, and out through the whole body. And you can pay attention to just the cranial sea flowing down through the nerves, or you can pay attention and you will feel that. You will just feel the cranial sea. Or you can pay attention to the spirals of the membrane in the myelinating glial cells, and that'll have a different quality. Or you can pay attention to the one sponge, which is full of body fluid or whatever I was, body sea, it has a different quality. Or you can pay attention to the one brain around it, and that has a different quality again. You see, I thought I was going to be able to explain this in 2 minutes, but actually it just goes on for ages. I'm not going to talk anymore. We will do the meditation. I've given a general idea. You can view it if you want to try and what I just, when I teach something for the first time, I think, well, it's obvious, you just say this, this and this, but then when I start describing it, I think, well, no one's going to understand that. So that was it. We're going to have, what's the time? Let's see, 20, oh my God. I'm going to need a 2-minute break because I've got to do a pee. So, and if you're happy to stay, we're going to go over time and we're going to have a longer meditation and just to feel that happening. And I've described why it works in the way that I experienced. I didn't work this all out. I experienced it like that, and I started looking for the science that explained what I was feeling. And when I looked, I found it. And you have to listen. That's why I have to put this out free. People won't listen unless these are free. All right, we're going to start. Okay, closing your eyes. And dropping into the holographic breathing. Notice how easily it starts. I've got a nervous twitch in my lip. Maybe I've been doing too much talking. So dropping into the holographic breathing And notice how easy it starts. It just is there. The lips are relaxed and closed. The tongue is relaxed and on the roof of the mouth. Jaw gently opens as you breathe in, and the jaw gently closes as you breathe out. And feeling the sideways motion of the breath in the body, in the face, in the cranium, opening out to the sides as you breathe in, closing medially as you breathe out. And if you feel that the sides of the cranium, you can start feeling inside your brain, and you drop into the cranial sea. And in the body of the brain and the body of the spinal cord, you have the cranial sea around all of the cells of the brain, and notice how that is quite bright. If you're in the actual where the cells are in the brain and where they are, it's quite bright, has a channel to it. But if you move out into, and that is like a sponge in the brain, because all of the tiny little astrocyte cells make a woven sponge there. But if you move out into the sponge around it where there are no cells, the one sponge around the brain and around the spinal cord, notice you can do that. It has a different quality. It may feel a bit darker, it may feel a bit different. Notice you can distinguish the sponge around the central nervous system with the cranial sea in it, and the sponge of the astrocyte cells inside the brain and the spinal cord, and moving back into the light, into the astrocyte cells, and the sea flowing through the astrocyte cells, the neurons, the microglial cells, and different cells of the brain and spine. You've got this quite bright energy, and the third eye and the crown chakra. You've got the cranial sea, and it has to go somewhere, and you feel it flowing out through the nerves. But what stays as cranial sea is in these tiny little capillaries. Hundreds, each nerve has between 50 and 100,000 capillaries of cranial sea flowing out through it that keep the integrity of the cranial sea. Around them you have the sea of the body in the one sponge, but notice you can feel, if you tune into the cranial sea in the nerves, it would be much clear, quite bright sea. You travel down the cranial capillaries out through the nerves, or the cranial sea capillaries that travel out through the nerves. So you've got the central body, in the central sponge of Cranial Sea, and it's quite bright. It's got it in the brain, in the spinal cord, and out through the cranial capillaries. Just keep dividing and dividing out through all of the nerves. Gently breathing with the holographic breathing. And then you can feel around that, feeling around the brain, into the sponge around the brain, into the sponge around the spinal cord. You've got the cranial sea in the second layer of the sponge. It may have a different quality. It's no longer in contact with the brain cells. It's just inside the sponge. And on the outside, that sponge is connecting into the Onebrane, the membrane that surrounds it all. Sounds like the one ring, doesn't it? The one ring that surrounds it all, the one brain that surrounds it all. And this one sponge, where it comes down and connects to the nerves, it flows into the one sponge in the nerves, which are around the different areas of capillaries and between the capillaries. So the sponge of the central nervous system flows into the sponge of the nerves. Now further down through the nerves, the capillaries don't have tight junctions, so they're creating the sea of the body, which is much denser and can't get into the central nervous system. And notice how this continual flow of sea travelling from the sponge of the central nervous system into the sponge of the nerves is stopping that body sea flowing into the cranial sea. It's all flowing down. And notice, and you can travel down through the whole nerves, you can feel the sponge of, it'll be, after a while it will just be body sea, so you can feel the sponge of body sea in the nerves travelling out through all of the nerves, and you can feel the quality of that sea. It has a quality to it, and the sponge has a quality. It's very, very fine, delicate fibres with fluid in it. Or you can drop from that into the cranial sea capillaries, and notice these are alive. These are the myelinating glial cells. They have neurons. They have neurons. They're alive, and they hold the cranial sea capillaries, and it's much brighter. So you've got and notice how you can distinguish between the two. You can move one to the other. So you can be in the center of the brain, the center of the spine, and then the cranial sea capillaries out through the nerves. Or you can be, just notice that quality. Or you can drop into the sponge around the brain and spine and the sponge of the nerves, and it's a different quality. And then around the whole thing you've got the Onebrane, and you can feel the cranial sea flowing through the Onebrane in the brain, and it creates a fluid filter. By the cranial sea flowing out through the Onebrane around your brain, it means no fluid from outside can flow back in. And you can feel it in your spinal cord. as the cranial sea flows out through the Onebrane around your spinal cord. It means no fluid from the body can flow back in. And in the first part of the nerves, it's important that the cranial sea is flowing. Now more will flow down through the nerves and just flow out through the sides. And then further down in the nerves, it's the sea of the body flowing out through the Onebrane. But you can feel this membrane around your whole nervous system, and you can feel either the cranial sea in the central nervous system or the sea of the body in the nerves flowing out through the Onebrane. Just instead of having lymph, it's just migrating en masse through your Onebrane. Notice how healing this is for the Onebrane. Notice how it brings it to life. Notice how relaxing it is. You are feeling the brain and the nervous system detoxing. All of the toxins, all of the carbon dioxide, all of the extra fluid is flowing out through the Onebrane into your body. Your whole nervous system is detoxing, and the Onebrane loves this. It heals the Onebrane. It moisturizes and aquifies the Onebrane, allowing that quality, allowing your Onebrane to heal, allowing it to moisturize, letting that fluid flow through the Onebrane and into the body, and it comes through the Onebrane into the sea of the body, and you can come out of the nerves, you can come out of the central nervous system into the sea of the body, the sea around all of the cells through the whole body, one totally connected sea that flows around all of the cells through all of the body. And this feeds the cells and will get picked up by the venous blood or the lymph, and we are going to go via the lymph. Get picked up in tiny little lymph ducts, and you'll start flowing towards the heart. And you've got the sea of the lymph, 4 times the size of the arterial blood and the venous blood, or 2 times the size of both of them together. Big sea, clear sea of water and different toxins and carbon dioxide flowing back to the heart. And closer to the heart you get, the warmer you'll get. Notice the heart, this big fiery ball. Gently breathing with the holographic breathing. And as you get close to the heart, you can feel the heart warming up. And as you arrive at the heart, you can feel you're joining into the blood entering the heart. You can feel it spiraling through the heart. You can feel it connecting to your ovaries and testes. And the blood goes through the heart, through the lungs, and then continues out, and some of it is travelling up towards the brain, towards the spinal cord and towards the nerves. And as it flows into the brain, it creates Cranial Sea. As it flows into the spinal cord, creates Cranial Sea. As it flows into the nerves, it creates Body Sea, sea for the body. And from the whole central area, this is flowing out and away as a water flow filter to keep the Cranial Sea pure. It's flowing down the nerves. It's flowing out through the Onebrane. And in the nerves, each capillary has tight junctions, so it's creating the Cranial Sea to travel down through the nerves. So it allows the Cranial Sea to travel out through the nerves and through the whole body. And it makes a cycle that is continually rotating in our body. Flowing out from the nerves, from the central nervous system, the brain, back towards, to the lymph, to the heart, to the blood, and back to the nervous system. And you've got these two seas, the Cranial Sea created from the blood and preserved by a fluid flow filter, that the fluid is just flowing in one direction because there are no lymph ducts. It keeps this Cranial Sea pristine. Sitting in that Cranial Sea, in the brain and in the spine, and allowing the divine energies to drop down through your head into the Cranial Sea. In the brain, in the spine, and out through the Cranial Sea capillaries, through the nerves, letting the spirit, letting the higher self channel through this pristine waters of the Cranial Sea, which are kept clear by fluid flow. Gently breathing. Letting your brain pulse. Letting the brain cells pulse. Letting the astrocyte cells pulse. So you've got the Cranial Sea, and then you have the cells that live in the Cranial Sea. And their extensions down the nerves of the myelinating glial cells and wrapped around the nerve fibers. And you can feel your nervous system healing. You can feel it receiving God. You can feel it receiving the Creator. Looking at it in this way, in this simple, easy way, opens a channel to the Creator, opens a channel to the divine, for the divine to flow down through the cranial sea and through the different levels of consciousness of the different anatomy. And at the center of the brain, the center of the spine, the center of the nerves, you have pristine water. Gently breathing with the holographic breathing. And this connects to Mother Earth, the deep Mother, the Mother Earth. Divine connects through you to Mother Earth. Gently breathing. Something going on in people's necks. Let your neck relax. Let the energies travel through the cervical spine in your neck. We're going to come back in about a minute. Gently breathing. Sending a thank you to the earth. Thank you to the higher self and beneficial energies. Thank you to yourself. And letting the energies go out for love and healing to the earth, for love and healing to the higher self, allowing yourself to be loved and healed. Letting the energies go out to all sentient beings, and you are a sentient being, allowing yourself to be loved and healed. And when you feel ready, gently allow yourself to come back.